The dream of a sun-drenched life on Crimea once lured thousands of Russians, drawn by the promise of endless summers, golden beaches, and a tranquil escape from the bustle of city life. But that fantasy has collapsed under the weight of war, leaving behind empty resorts and shattered hopes where laughter once echoed. After the 2014 annexation, Russians flocked to the Black Sea, buying homes and starting new lives, convinced Crimea was theirs forever. The peninsula became a symbol of new beginnings, with bustling neighborhoods and dreams of prosperity. Now, a decade later, those same settlers are fleeing in droves, their hopes shattered by the relentless sounds of conflict. The roads out of Crimea are choked with families desperate to escape, their cars packed with whatever they can carry. Real estate markets are flooded as families scramble to sell, desperate to escape the growing danger. Once coveted homes now stand empty, silent witnesses to a mass exodus. The war, once distant, is now a daily terror. Air raid sirens, explosions, and military convoys have turned paradise into a militarized zone. The sense of safety has vanished, replaced by constant fear and uncertainty. The exodus is a clear sign. The Kremlin's Crimean project is failing. Checkpoints stand deserted, and the symbols of Russian control are fading from the landscape. Ukraine's targeted strikes on military infrastructure have made life untenable for settlers, dismantling Russia's decade-long fortress. The illusion of invincibility has been shattered, and the cost of occupation is now painfully clear. Each family leaving is a testament to Ukraine's resilience and a warning. Crimea is not a safe haven for occupiers. The heartbreak of departure is etched on every face, a silent story of loss and hope. The message is unmistakable. Crimea is Ukrainian soil, and liberation is coming. The blue and yellow flag rises again, a symbol of defiance and the promise of return. The dream has ended. Reality has taken its place. Crimea's story is being rewritten, not by occupiers, but by those who refuse to let go of hope. The Kremlin promised Crimea would be a Russian paradise, but the reality was isolation and disappointment. New arrivals found low wages, decimated tourism, and a lack of decent jobs. The vibrant economic hub they were promised was, in truth, an economic backwater. International brands vanished, and essential services, especially healthcare, deteriorated. Residents faced corruption, high costs, and decaying infrastructure. Social tensions simmered. Locals resented the newcomers, seeing them as occupiers, driving up prices and straining resources. Crimean Tatars and Ukrainians felt their culture was under threat, while Russian settlers felt unwelcome and isolated. The dream of unity was replaced by suspicion and division. The promised prosperity never arrived. Instead, life became a daily struggle. The illusion of a modern, thriving Crimea crumbled quickly. For many, the only escape from disappointment and hostility was to leave. The paradise they sought was never real. Fear is now the most powerful force in Crimea. It grips the hearts of the people, dictating their every move and decision. Once a distant conflict, war has become a daily reality. Air raid sirens, explosions, and military checkpoints are everywhere. The sounds of war are now the soundtrack of life. Families live in constant anxiety, children suffer panic attacks, and the sense of security has vanished. The psychological toll is immense. Ukrainian strikes hit military targets with increasing precision, making the war impossible to ignore. Each strike brings the conflict closer to home. The Black Sea Fleet's headquarters and supply depots have been attacked, sending shockwaves through the population. The once mighty fleet now seems vulnerable. Even the families of Russian officers are quietly evacuating, a clear sign of growing desperation. The exodus speaks volumes about the deteriorating situation. The military presence meant to guarantee safety has instead made Crimea a target. The streets are filled with soldiers, but safety feels more elusive than ever. Panic spreads as the myth of invincibility crumbles. The once unshakable confidence is now replaced by sheer terror. The feedback loop of fear accelerates the exodus. If the elite are fleeing, ordinary settlers have little reason to stay. The mass departure is a testament to the pervasive fear. The war is no longer at the doorstep, it's inside the home. The destruction is personal and inescapable. For many, leaving is the only way to escape the nightmare. The journey away from home is filled with uncertainty, but staying is no longer an option. Fear, not hope, now rules Crimea. The once vibrant streets are now silent, a haunting reminder of what has been lost. Economic prosperity was the Kremlin's promise, but Crimea's reality is stagnation and decline. Tourism, once the peninsula's lifeblood, has collapsed. Beaches and resorts now stand empty. War and sanctions have isolated Crimea, cutting off investment and opportunity. The job market is bleak. Low-wage manual labor or military construction are often the only options. High costs and broken supply chains have made daily life unaffordable for most. Young people and professionals see no future. Families struggle to survive. The newcomers, once blamed for rising prices, now suffer alongside locals as inflation and shortages bite. The dream of a prosperous Crimea has vanished. With no jobs, low pay, and soaring prices, the incentive to leave is overwhelming. Economic despair is driving the exodus as much as fear. Crimea's future, for many, lies elsewhere. The Kremlin's plan to solidify control through mass migration has backfired, deepening social divisions in Crimea. What was intended to be a strategic move has instead created a complex and volatile social landscape. Indigenous Crimean Tatars and Ukrainians saw the influx of Russians as an invasion, their culture suppressed and their homeland transformed. The rich tapestry of local traditions and customs began to unravel under the weight of new influences. Locals blame newcomers for rising costs, strained services, and environmental damage. The sudden population increase put immense pressure on already limited resources, exacerbating existing issues. Russian settlers, expecting gratitude, instead found hostility and isolation. Their dreams of a warm welcome were shattered by the cold reality of social rejection. The dream of unity under the Russian flag dissolved into mutual suspicion and resentment. What was once a vision of harmony turned into a nightmare of discord. As the war escalates, paranoia grows. Some Russians suspect locals of aiding Ukraine, while locals see settlers as occupiers. The atmosphere is thick with distrust, making everyday interactions fraught with tension. Every explosion deepens the divide, fueling mistrust and fear. The constant threat of violence looms over daily life, making reconciliation seem impossible. The toxic social environment leaves newcomers feeling unwelcome and locals feeling displaced. The sense of community has eroded, replaced by a pervasive feeling of alienation. For many Russians, the realization sets in: they will never truly belong. The dream of a new life in Crimea has turned into a harsh reality of exclusion. The war has intensified these divisions, making daily life unbearable. The constant strain has left both locals and newcomers struggling to find a sense of normalcy. The exodus is not just about bombs, it's about fleeing a fractured society. People are leaving in search of peace and stability, something that seems increasingly unattainable in Crimea. In Crimea, community spirit has been replaced by suspicion. The bonds that once held neighborhoods together have been severed by fear and mistrust. The dream of belonging is gone. What remains is a fractured society, struggling to find its way amidst the chaos. Ukraine's campaign to reclaim Crimea is a masterclass in modern warfare. Lacking naval power, Ukraine uses missiles, drones, and sabotage to dismantle Russia's military presence. Key assets of the Black Sea Fleet have been struck, supply lines disrupted, and the Kerch Bridge repeatedly damaged. Each attack shatters the myth of Russian invincibility and saps the occupiers' morale. The Black Sea Fleet has been forced to retreat, exposing the vulnerability of Russian settlers. The Kremlin can no longer guarantee safety. This realization drives the exodus. For Ukrainians, every strike is a step toward justice and liberation. The world watches as Ukraine proves it will never accept the occupation. For Russians in Crimea, the warning is clear. Their time on stolen land is ending. The strategic campaign is turning the tide. The roots of today's exodus lie in the 2014 annexation, a military takeover disguised as a popular uprising. Before the invasion, most Crimeans preferred autonomy within Ukraine, not union with Russia. The so-called referendum was a sham, held under armed occupation with no real choice offered. The Kremlin's claims of overwhelming support were widely dismissed as fraudulent. Since then, dissent has been crushed. Forced passportization, persecution, and mass arrests have become the norm. Crimean Tatars and Ukrainians have faced intimidation, torture, and imprisonment. Evidence points to Crimea being used for illegal detentions, and even trafficking of kidnapped Ukrainian children. The reality of Russian rule has been one of repression and fear. The world must remember, Crimea's annexation was never legitimate. The suffering of its people is the true legacy of occupation. The exodus is a direct result of this injustice. As Russian settlers flee, hope returns for millions of Ukrainians who never gave up on a free Crimea. Each family leaving, each military strike, brings the dream of liberation closer. Ukrainian soldiers and local resistance fighters risk everything to reclaim their homeland. The world's support, military, economic and diplomatic, is vital to ensure justice prevails. Restoring Ukrainian sovereignty is about more than borders. It's about global security and the rule of law. The end of occupation promises justice, freedom, and the revival of Crimea's multicultural society. Crimean Tatars, Ukrainians, and others long for a future without fear or repression. The journey is difficult, but the dream of a peaceful, free Crimea burns brighter than ever. The exodus marks the beginning of renewal. Paradise this time will be real.